my head in the stars. You know what that means? Nap time? Yeah. We'll see y'all tomorrow. No, I'm kidding. Actually, we have a class. Yeah, so welcome everyone to Understanding Bias and Microaggressions. I am not Aaron Duffy. My name is Carl Rabin. If you haven't met me yet, it's very nice to meet you. And we're going to go through defining bias and microaggressions and thinking about that idea of what it means to practice racial equity and inclusion and belonging. And so taking a look at just the idea of what the definitions are that we have within the statewide initiative and how to mitigate bias, right? Actually, where bias comes from, what it is. You know, if you were in the plenary session this morning, I kind of let the cat out the bag. We all have biases, sorry. But, you know, we'll figure that out as we go along. We'll talk about what it means to include, what it means to belong, and we'll do some discussion on microaggressions and how they show up and what to do when they show up, right? And sometimes when they show up, we're the ones that are making them show up. So we'll figure out what to do in those situations. So before we jump into anything else, just want to have a quick understanding of some of our expectations, some group agreements, right? So how do we want to treat each other in this next hour and a half, right? How is it that we would like to see this discussion held, right? Because it's a discussion that has to be held, right? But so how do we want to do it with each other? How do we, want to be able to be respectful of each other, to have a participatory opportunity? This isn't something that people talk about in break rooms, is it? You hear a lot of people talking about this out loud in open break rooms? Yeah.
I think we do now more.
Yeah.
Before, I think we're more aware of it.
Yeah.
I know I'm more aware of it
Yeah.
than I used to be 4 years ago.
Yeah. Very cool. So in your break rooms, you hear people talking about the idea of equity and inclusion.
No, but we talk more about our biases.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. How many other people in here? But that's kind of just a regular discussion that you hear at your cubicles, in your office, in your break room. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And for some people, it is one of those hot topics, right? Especially some of the words that are used where people feel like it's verboten. But if you want to hide under a rock, I mean, it's going to happen whether you like it or not, right? So how do we have those discussions in a way that's respectful, understanding of each other, where we can feel like the space that we're sharing is one of mutual understanding and trying to have a better understanding of each other, right? Maybe just to take the political edge off of it, right? Which is hard to do these days because it seems like everything has a political edge these days, right? So, just to have an open mind, to learn, embrace something maybe you haven't thought of. If you have one thing during this class that, oh, okay, well, I haven't thought of it that way, or something that somebody else shares with you in a way that's that way, that's pretty cool. That's a takeaway, right? And so, have fun. Yeah, I'll definitely try to make it fun, but like I said, if this is the topic that's, a little scary for you, if it's less scary for you, if it's demystified, there's some understanding of it, then we're in a good space. Any of those up there really stand out to you as something that's important to you? Yeah, so listen for understanding and not agreement. Yeah, absolutely. Right, we're going to have opportunities where, we may not all agree, and we may agree to disagree, right? But if we're having a conversation where we leave it where we agree to disagree, but we've had a conversation, some people have heard some things maybe they're not used to talking about or even accepting, right? And so that's definitely an important one, right? Sometimes our best intentions may not land on somebody in the right way, right? So intent versus impact. Our best intentions may have a negative impact on somebody else. And that's something we'll talk about as we go along as well. So, there are no bad questions. People may say something that you're just, I can't believe that person just said that out loud. right? That's okay, right? If you feel comfortable enough to ask that question in here, then let's accept that as, okay, this is a teaching opportunity rather than judging them as bless you. Not judging them as bless you, but here's another one. I'm just waiting. My wife does it in threes, so I say bless you, bless you, bless you, and then she's like, you can wait while she's sneezing. Okay, but, so, but yeah, so, if we can all, have an open mind, have the conversation in a real and truthful way, and recognize not everyone's experience is the same. Such an important piece, right? All right. Any other expectations that aren't up there that maybe you would like to see honored? Okay. So just a little bit of background, when it comes to some people, if you know me, you know me. If you don't know me, so been working in this space I've been in human services now for 22 years. Tomorrow will be my 22-year anniversary. And worked 5 years in Kern County Department of Human Services, right, in employment services. I was a welfare work case manager. We were called social service workers. I was also a supervisor, and I helped develop and run our job club, our 3-week intensive job readiness workshop. Caught on with Davis after that. So all together, it's been 22 years. Been training in the counties. If you've seen me in the counties, I've been out there with you guys or virtually, right? For a good 18 years now. Also for the REIB rollout, I was one of the training staff for your program directors. So the program directors all had classes, and I did a bunch of classes for them. Also, I wrote the class for implicit bias and disproportionality for the Family First Prevention Services program that was pushed out to all social workers on child welfare throughout the state, and did all the training for that as well. So that's a little bit about my background. So Aaron's not here. We're going to get through it. Hopefully I can be a good substitute, just so you all know. So, all right. Any questions before we get started? Okay, so as we go forward, I'm going to ask if there's any questions or comments. Just like the expectations, to feel free to ask questions. There is no bad question. There are no bad comments, right? And if you don't have anything that you want to add, that's perfectly fine. You can remain silent. Just know that silence might come back to you, like we just did, which kind of makes people feel weird a little bit, right? Sometimes I was on a Zoom class a couple weeks ago, and I was sitting there waiting for someone to say something, and somebody said, "Did he freeze? Is he frozen?" and it's not that I'm waiting for someone to speak. On average, it takes people 5 to 7 seconds to formulate a question or a comment, right? Those of us who are a little more extroverted or maybe are verbal processors, anybody who brainstorms out loud? Well, you're asking me that question, so I guess in those situations, yeah, that happens, so yeah, that's my answer, right? So those folks, they answer a little sooner. Introverts and folks who are more internal processors, it takes a little bit longer, right? Maybe 6 to 10 seconds, because they're thinking about exactly what they want to say before they say it. So they're not going to brainstorm out loud. They're going to give you a somewhat finished product when they're speaking. So it takes a little bit longer, 6 to 10 seconds. So on average, it's 5 to 7. Is that new to anybody? Anybody think that's odd? That's weird, huh? She's heard it, I'm sure, 8 or 9 times by now. I get up to Humble very often. But, think about it. When's the last time anybody gave you 5 to 7 seconds to think about a response you're giving them? When's the last time you gave somebody 5 to 7 seconds to respond to something? Right? Think about that. We have meetings, staff meetings, stand-ups, one-on-ones with our boss, with our clients, in a training session, right? Just think about it. Have you ever seen this? Any questions on the expectations? None? Okay, so moving forward. How often does that happen? More often than the 5 to 7 seconds for sure, right? And if you have a question, but you're not quite sure exactly what it is, and that person's moved on, what does that do to your idea of, hey, I feel like this is the right place for me to really think about what I want to say and express myself? Kills engagement, right? So I definitely don't want to do that. Like I said, this is a class where hopefully if we're engaged and having real conversations at our tables or with each other, then really that's the goal of the class. Right? So if I'm quiet, I'm not waiting for someone to speak. I just want to make sure everyone feels heard. Fair enough? Okay. So our first question I have is for folks at your table. So if you have 4, partner up. If you have 3, then you can come together as a group. But just think about this question. What's a lesson that you learned at a young age that still comes up when you're interacting with adults? Right? So something that you learned as a child, right? Maybe your parents taught you, teacher, coach, pastor, another family member, whoever it was. Something that somebody who was important to your life gave you a lesson that's really stuck with you all the way through, even now when you interact with adults. Go ahead and share that with a partner, and we'll come back in a couple minutes. Thank you, everybody, for having that conversation. Did anybody have a lesson they wouldn't mind sharing with the rest of us? Okay. I got to get my steps in. Look, this is not conference steps.
Since this morning. Okay. Hi, Jamie from Sutter. One of the things that I have taken with me probably all through my career that my grandpa used to tell me was think before I speak and make sure that I'm doing more listening than speaking.
That's right. God gave you one mouth and 2. Yeah, no, you heard that one right. Yeah. Thank you. What else? Anybody else? Okay.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, I got it. It adds so much pressure to have the microphone. Just such as, like, everyone should know this, but active listening. I feel like somebody told me that as a kid, and I was like, what does that mean? And now, as an adult, I feel like I say that a lot to people, and just, like, remind people to practice that, because being in this field, like, I think we just forget to do that, and you're job-focused, and we forget to listen and just hear what they have to say, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, we get in the grind. We get tunnel vision. We got to figure out things and accomplish our tasks. And sometimes we get so task focused that we forget the impact we have on other people, right? Yeah, absolutely. And naturally, that's about half of us. If you believe the Myers-Briggs, folks, they'll tell you 50% of us are task focused, where we just accomplish tasks and the emotions and small talk can happen later. But then the other half of us are relationship focused, where that small talk is what helps us build a relationship that makes us work harder for each other, right? 2 different mindsets, right? Absolutely. Thank you. One more lesson. All right.
Just treat others how you want to be treated.
Love it. The golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated, right? Yeah. That's definitely a popular one. So just even thinking about that idea of the golden rule. Yeah, as an adult, have you found that everybody wants to be treated exactly the same way? Right? Remember, I mentioned some of us, we live in an extroverted world. Right? And if somebody doesn't answer right away, what do we think? Why aren't they responding? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with, do they not like me? Right? Right? Not everyone wants to be treated that same way. But yet, it's a great lesson to teach kids. Right? What are some other lessons to teach? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Do you find that works as an adult when you have to advocate for yourself? Maybe it's find a nice way to say something you have to say, right? But how many people, and I've heard people say that, well, I was taught if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Okay, so cool. So something that might be really, really important doesn't get elevated, right? Because of this thought you have in your head from when you were 6, 7 years old, right? And that's a challenge. It's real hard. How many people were taught, don't judge a book by its cover, treat everyone the same? Okay, cool. Well, the problem is your limbic system says that's a cute lesson to teach kids, but it doesn't work as an adult, right? That's a nice lesson to teach kids about respect, and to be polite, but your limbic system says, my job is to keep us safe. So I am profiling everybody in this room, whether you like it or not. Within 7 seconds, I have decided who you are and how safe you are to me so that I stay safe. Our brain the limbic system, where we get our information first. The lizard brain, the ape brain, right? The oldest part of our brain, the part of our brain that's been there since we evolved as a species. And how do we evolve as a species? We detected threats and dealt with them quicker than any other animal. That's how we became top of the food chain, right? But we're not out in the savannah anymore worried about being eaten by another animal, but that response is still there. So when we see something, we identify it being safe or dangerous. And it's one side or the other. You know what else goes on the dangerous side? If I'm uncomfortable, if I'm unfamiliar with something, if somebody is acting in a way that I was taught was wrong, if somebody looks differently than me, or is walking, like I said, if you're in an interview room and you see somebody walking towards you, you've already sized up who they are. And you're like, no, I haven't. No, maybe you haven't here, but you have here, right? I mean, and it really affects us all. You know, who here, does anybody hire anybody here? Okay. You know how long it takes to decide if you want to hire somebody or not? Honestly. Couple of minutes. Lower. Or let's play card sharks. Lower. 10 seconds, higher. Lower. 21 seconds. 21 seconds to decide if you want to hire somebody or not. Think about how that works, right? What happens in the first 21 seconds of an interview? Yeah. Like I said, I used to teach, job readiness workshops. So we used to have, exercises where we'd line people up and they come shake our hands. And so we'd have people, they would come up and they go, "Hi, my name is Carl, it's nice to meet you." Look, she's like, "What are you doing with your hand," right? Literally, you want to shake your hand like that. Then you have those people who walk in, "Hey, what's going on? My name is Carl. Hey, I need a job. Can you hook me up, man? You got my cousin a job last week. Come on, man. I heard y'all got jobs." And then you have the other person, "Good afternoon. My name is Carl Raven. It's so nice to meet you." All right. Do we have a different idea of all three of those people? Yeah. I mean, if we don't, it's because I'm not going to judge. No, just thinking about that idea. Who just right off the rip do we think would represent our company better? Number 3. Who might we want to hang out with at Buffalo Wild Wings and watch the Niner game with? Number 2. Who might be a little stranger danger, right? That's a real feeling. That's a real situation that our brain is going through, right? And so it does it without our permission, so it's pervasive. It happens without your permission. It's going to automatically do, this person's not acting the way that I was taught was appropriate, so I'm going to act accordingly. Danger, right? And what do we do with things that are dangerous or things that we don't think are correct? We either avoid them or we spend a lot less time with them, right? You tolerate those things that you got to get through, you got to deal with. Anybody ever dealt with a person that you have to tolerate? What if that person's a client? Are they getting the same service as that person that, "Oh, wow, I had a great conversation with them last time," right? So that's the challenge, and that's the challenge in human services. That's the challenge in life, right? And bias is just that, right? It's an inclination or a preference. We have positive biases, we have negative biases, right? We have positive biases. We all have, my podcast partner, Tiffany, she always says, "You all have your favorite kids, don't lie." Right? Somebody's like, "That's not true. I only have one, so that's my stepkids know, hey, look, I love you guys, and I'm not going to treat you different, but, that's my baby." Anyway, so, just recognizing that we have preferences. We all prefer, when we see things that we prefer, what happens? Right? How many people, if I was to say, when I was a kid, I used to play till the streetlights came on. How many people, right? We're leaning into it. We're here, right? That is a positive preference. That's called an affinity bias, right? We have an affinity towards that person we share something with, right? If we went to the same high school, we lived in the same city, right? We listened to the same music growing up, right? Whatever it is, right? And then we have those negative biases where things that aren't necessarily normal to us or that we're seen as, run-of-the-mill for us. Something is different, something is odd, something is happening that we were taught is wrong, right? So, they can be implicit, which is that subconscious and direct. And the challenge with the explicit stuff is stuff you see. You just know that person will tell you exactly how they feel and treat you differently, right? The way I do Dodger fans. I don't know if any of you are Dodger fans. Just don't tell me you're a Dodger fan. We're good, right? But that's explicit. I'm not going to hide it. Although it's just sports at the end of the day, and you guys won. That's fine. Okay, great. But at least you know where I'm coming from. You guys ever hear that? I'd rather you tell me that you have an issue with me rather than have to find out from someone else, right? And that's where the implicit stuff comes in. The implicit stuff is stuff that is subconscious, right? Most of what goes through our brain is subconscious, right? Our brain takes in 11 million bits of information per second. 11 million bits of information. Colors, height, temperature, body movement, eye contact, right? How often do we think about how many times our eyes blink? Or just even breathing, unless you're sick or have an asthma issue or anything else like that. There's so much data we're taking in on a regular basis. How many of that do you think is conscious? Anybody know? Of the 11 million bits of information we take in, 40 are conscious. 40 out of 11 million. That means 9,999,960 bits of information are going through your brain every second that you are not consciously aware of. And some of those may tickle little triggers or things that you were taught were right or wrong, and you don't even recognize that they've happened. Anybody ever get a chill or that idea of deja vu or just anything that just put you in a place you didn't even know why it happened? Very often it's something that triggers you in your subconscious, right? Especially if you've experienced trauma and things like that, that happens a lot more readily and obvious to you, right? But those implicit bias situations, the things that are subconscious, they are pervasive. They come up without your permission, right? And they can affect the way that you interact with people and things, right? And like I said, you may not even recognize that you're experiencing it, right? Until today, until you know. We're experiencing those things, right? So it definitely is a challenge. Here's an example. Go ahead and read that and tell me. What's the issue with that?
The assumption?
The assumption.
Yeah.
What's the assumption?
It's the ethnic background?
Yeah, the ethnic background. Yeah. It's funny, I just saw the slide deck this morning because I'm filling in, right, for the slide deck, but this totally hit home to me because, on the first day that I was live on the floor at my job, I was given, just a dummy caseload per se, right? So 30 cases. 2/3 of those cases were Spanish speaking only. I don't speak Spanish. And, my boss was, so excited to have me, and I realize why. I guess she didn't want it. She wanted to share the Spanish-speaking caseload. And I said, the problem, these are Spanish speaker only? Well, yeah. I said, I don't speak Spanish. Really? Yeah, really. Right, but I get that a lot, right? And that's something that happens to me all the time. 9 times out of 10 when I walk into a authentic Mexican or Salvadorian restaurant, people ask me my order in Spanish. And I've learned to say, lo siento, no hablo español. And then they look at me like, you don't know Spanish, right? Which, I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced that if you don't speak Spanish, but you are Hispanic. And then I say, no soy Latino, right? And I say it with good pronunciation, but I don't speak Spanish. I'm not Latino. My dad's black, my mom's German, Irish, and Chumash Indian, right? But like I said, I get that a lot. I got it this morning. One of our parent folks, she's like, you're Puerto Rican, aren't you, with those green eyes? I said, no, I'm not, but thank you. I appreciate that, right? So, but that happens, and I can tell you it happens because it happened to me. It happens to me, right? It happened to me my first day live on the job, right?
It happens to me every day because I'm in the lobby as a lobby supervisor, so I stand by the kiosk to help and support the HSAs. When customers comes up, they say, do you speak Spanish? I'm like, I wish I could, but no. Yeah.
Our Spanish speaker was a friend named Rick Shear. His first name was Enrique. His mom, he was born in Camagüey, Cuba. His mom was Cuban. His dad was a military officer in Cuba, in Guantanamo, and he was born in Camagüey. And he was about this tall, really, like long hair, really bushy mustache, and he grew up in Virginia, so he had this real thick Virginia drawl. So he would speak Spanish, like, ¿Cómo se llama, señora? And we used to smoke cigarettes together when I smoked cigarettes, and we'd be outside and someone would walk up, you speak Spanish? And I point to him, and they're like, do I trust what you're doing, right? But ven aquí, señorita, right? I'm just like, oh, wow, okay, go ahead, do your thing. But, it was a trip for all three of us, and it happened on a regular basis, right? And I'm sure there wasn't any harm. It's like, can I get some help? So I never treated it like someone was, doing that on purpose or to be rude, but it's something that happens on a regular basis. We see somebody, we identify something, and then we act accordingly, right? And sometimes we're right, and a lot of times we're not, right? How about that? Do you guys see anything familiar with there? What do you see?
We're just someone that doesn't want to, wants to agree to just kind of not draw attention to themselves, but doesn't want to really say, that they're part of, they feel less than.
They feel less than because the guy's talking about their neighborhood, right? Yeah. You guys ever read a client's address and you're like, oh, okay, they're from that part of town? Have you ever do that? Yeah, in Kern County, we had that. If you lived in Bakersfield and you lived in 93307, it was called the 07. 07, right? And we used to have to do home visits. So if it was in the 07, or if where I was out in Boron or in Mojave and some of the trailer parks with the clouds, when there's a cloudless sky, but then there's these weird clouds, right? And people would immediately have an idea of who that person is, what they're up to, what to be aware of when they're out there, right? What does that do to your level of service for that person? Could it cause you to be a little more cautious, not ask a question that might unlock a service? Because I don't want to start anything. I don't want to get in trouble. I know I'm not in the best neighborhood, right? But just think about how often that happens, right? And so, like I mentioned, we all have biases. They can be things that we prefer, things that we don't. And they are challenges to how we interact with folks. I'll give you a bias. My dad taught me anybody who sags their pants, wears their pants below their waist, is dressing like a criminal. Right? And I remember exactly when he told me, because I went through a bias class 10 years ago, and they said, think about when that happened. And I remember I was in San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco in the Fillmore District, walking down Gary Boulevard with my dad, who didn't live with us, but whenever he came and saw me, we had a good time. We were walking down the block, and these two guys were walking past us with the saggy pants, big shirts, shaved heads, and cussing up a storm. And as they walked past, my dad turned around to me. You have to know my dad. My dad's 6'5", At the time, he was 250s, right? So he was built. He looks like a football player. When he was older, he used to wear his 49ers jersey, and they used to think he was whenever he'd come into town, and they'd give him a suite at the hotel he would stay at. And he let them think that because that's my dad. But he was super nice. He's always been a charmer. He taught me, he said, hey, look, growing up in the 60s in San Francisco, being 6'5" and 400 pounds, I had to be nice so that my teachers weren't intimidated by me so I could get decent grades. I mean, he knew that at a young age, right? And so he was really nice to charmer, but he turned around and looked at me and said 3 words to me. I had never seen him look at me in this way or say to me. He'd say, if you ever. And he's standing above me. Like I said, he's a big dude, and I'm like 11 at the time. And he was standing in front of the sun, and he used to wear his hair out. He had an afro, and it looked like he had a halo going around, like a comic book superhero, looking down at me with this look on his face. You think that left an impression? He said, Ravens don't dress like criminals. That's all he said. Then we went on and got our ice cream. But that's all I got in my head. The ice cream, I don't even remember the ice cream. I couldn't tell you what I got. I remember how he looked at me. Right? Some more context. My dad was an Oakland Police Department cop. He was a probation officer for California Youth Authority before that. And he was an investigator for the alcoholic beverage control after that. So he knows the inside of prisons, inside the jails. And he knows people, that are incarcerated, they wear baggy clothes to hide weapons or to protect themselves. And he wanted to make sure that in the mid-'80s, when saggy pants and prison dress came out to Bay Area culture, that his only son was not going to carry his name and dress like that, right? So what did I do growing up? I wore my pants up. But anybody who was sagging their pants, pull up your pants. You think you're hard or something? You're not getting my car till you pull up your pants. Right? You guys remember Pants on the Ground, American Idol? Yeah, and nobody? Huh? Okay, well, that was me, right? So fast forward 20 years. I'm a welfare to work case manager. How many of my clients do you think walk through the door with their pants sagging? More than a few, right? And do you think, and I hear my dad in my head every time I see it. To this day, if I see somebody sagging their pants, my first thought is, pull up your pants. And then my second thought is, why are you judging them? You don't even know them. Have they come up and asked you for your opinion? Right? But that's still in my head. Right? But if I would have let my dad's view of that color the way that I treated those clients, would I have treated them the same as if they walked in with khakis and a collared shirt? There's a good chance maybe not. Right? So that's a real world situation that I had to catch myself. But like I said, to this day, I still hear my dad. I got my first tattoo when I was 37, and I heard my dad as I was getting the tattoo. Good luck finding a job. These things come up whether you like them or not. They're going to come up even if you don't agree with them. They're going to come up, and you might tell yourself, I can't believe somebody told me that. Well, I know better than that, right? But what if we don't? What if we say, that person who I love to death taught me that this was bad, right? So just think about, what's a bias you might have, and where does it come from, right? And just with your table, just share. If you can be vulnerable, just share. What's a bias you have? People who talk loud, people who are demanding, people who are aggressive, people who have head tattoos, whatever it is, right? Just go ahead and share. What's a bias that you have, and where do you think it comes from? So thank you, everybody. If you didn't get a chance to share your biases, make sure you meet the person that you're talking to right now in the bar afterwards and share your biases with each other. Anybody mind sharing a bias that they have? Okay. Did you say you like talking? You're funny.
I was a facilitator for years. I talked about my family's bias. I came from a family of all cops and lawyers and sheriff's deputies. I went to the dark side. I married a fireman, which is good. But my family to this day still believes that homeless people are all criminals and drug addicts. And so when people ask what I do for a living, she works with criminals and drug addicts. I'm all, wow. So we don't talk about my job.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. You know, and that's something, like I said, my dad was a cop too, right? And what are cops taught, especially these days? Everybody's a suspect, right? Even the person who seems like they are the least dangerous may be dangerous, right? Think about how that translates to what we do with our clients. How many people work with other people who think every client's out to game the system? Now, there are some clients who are out to game the system. What do you think is the percentage of our population? Yeah. I mean, 10% of us are either schizophrenic or narcissistic or borderline personality, right? That's about 10%. So even if we were to say 10% of just even our clients, not that there's a mental health challenge, but even 10% do not have our best interest in mind, that's 10%. And what do we do with the other 90%? We treat them like the 10%. And we're talking about engaging and being client-centered, family-centered. We can say we're family-centered till the cows come home if you know, and we still believe that they are trying to pull a fast one on us. Is that really going to build that relationship where they feel like we have their best interest in mind? That's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough one. Because if they do take advantage of the system, how do we feel when we find out that one of our clients has been lying to us or manipulating us? That's another neurological phenomenon in our brain. None of us want to feel like we've been duped or played the fool, right? And so it's easier to be safe. Remember, our brain wants to be safe. Our brain wants what's called homeostasis. I know what to expect. I want to predict behavior, so we create heuristics, which are these little buckets in our thought processes where we can put people or things into these buckets that link them to things that have happened in the past. So we can predict that person's behavior. If this person looks like somebody in the past, we might link them to that, right? And sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not, right? But those create stereotypes where we are thinking about how we are going to treat this person, how we're going to interact with this person, right? Which leads us to discriminate. But discrimination isn't inherently negative. I have a different conversation with my 73-year-old mother than I do with my 24-year-old daughter. My mother does not care about, she's not interested in finding outfits for SAC Anime Con that's happening in January. So I don't talk to her about that, right? So I discriminate our conversations. It's when we have those negative heuristics that are stereotypes mixed in with that discrimination where we decide we're not going to interact with somebody in the same way we would with somebody else. And that's the challenge with equity, right? And, so racial equity, right, just societal equity, it really is a challenge because our brain would rather make these assumptions about people to keep us